In the last session, we have discussed about the regarding the, about the provisions of the Constitution containing center-state legislative relations. Through discussion on legislative relations, I have tried to reveal the untold story of Indian federalism. To unveil some other facts of Indian federalism and effects of centralization, let's turn our eyes on center state administrative relations. If we look at history, actually, a highly centralized colonial government under British India has slowly been transformed to form Indian federal unit. And in post independent India, this centralized model was accepted for the sake of planned development, for maintaining and upholding national integration, unity and integrity of the nation, and for maintaining law and order. Allocation of administrative responsibilities was so designed as to ensure proper execution of law, settlement of disputes between the center and the states, achieving better coordination to help growing the spirit of cooperative federalism, to serve the purpose of Article 355. What does Article 355 say? It says that it shall be the duty of the Union to protect every state from external aggression. But experience shows that these purposes have been distorted and power, there has been extensive misuse of power, often on part of the central government. Further, I've already told you that single party dominant system over a long period of time has contributed a lot to the increased power of center. Now let's have a look on the administrative structure of India. There is Government of India. Below it are the state governments and 7 union territories. State governments, they are divided into divisions, districts and so on. Now, this is the pyramidal structure. Everywhere it is like this. But so far as the question of democratic decentralization is concerned, so far as devolution of power is concerned, it is more a delegation of authority, which is conducive to maintain a unitary state, not a federal state. If we turn our eyes on the provisions of the Constitution which defines administrative relations, perhaps answer to lot of queries raised in the last session will be revealed. Now, these provisions actually indicate towards administration of Indian political system along a unitary line. Let's turn our eyes on Article 73. Article 73 says that subject to the provisions of the Constitution, the executive power of the Union shall extend to the matters with respect to which the Parliament has the power to make laws, that is, Union list, and to the exercise of such rights, authority and jurisdiction as are exercisable by the Government of India by virtue of any treaty or agreement. Article 162. Article 162 says that subject to the provisions of the Constitution, the executive power of a state shall extend to the matters with respect to which the legislature of the state has the power to make laws, that is, state list. Now, this much was okay. There was a proper allocation of power, maybe uneven, but there was at least an allocation of power. But if we look at Article 256, what it says, it enumerates about obligation of states and union, that is it says that executive power of every state must be exercised in compliance with the laws made by the parliament. That is, state executive, whenever it will be taking any decision, it must be in compliance with the laws made by the parliament. Article 257. It tells about the control of the union over states in certain cases. It says that executive power of every state must be exercised in compliance with the executive power of the union. In Article 256, executive power of the state must be in compliance with legislation made by the parliament, and in Article 257, executive power of the state must be carried on in compliance with the executive power of the union. If there is any sort of deviation, then in both the cases, centre can issue directives. In Article 256 and Article 257, it says that if there is any sort of deviation, that is, if the states fail to go by the decision of the centre, that is, laws made by the parliament or the decision taken by the union executive, then the centre can issue directive. Now, who gives directive to whom? Situation comes like this. There is a superior subordinate relationship between the centre and the states. Whenever there is a superior subordinate relationship, that is, centre is holding a superior position, it is clear that states are not autonomous units of Indian Federal Constitution. Article 258. Article 258 suggests that the Union, that is the Government of India, enjoys the power to confer certain powers, etc., on the states in certain cases. How it reads? Notwithstanding anything in this constitution, the President may, with the consent of the government of a state, entrust either conditionally or unconditionally to that government or to its officers functions in relation to any matter in which executive power of the Union extends. Article 258 clause 2 says, a law made by the Parliament which applies in any state may, notwithstanding that it relates to a matter with respect to which the legislature of the state has no power to make laws, confer powers, impose duties, or authorize the conferring powers or the imposition of duties upon the state or officers and authorities thereof. Now, whenever the question of conferring powers to state government comes forth, Article 258 clause 3 opens up another thing, where by virtue of this article, powers and duties have been conferred or imposed upon a state, etc., shall be paid by the Government of India to the state such sum as may be agreed, or in default of agreement as may be determined by an arbitrator appointed by the Chief Justice of India. And one thing we must take into account, that as per Article 258 clause 3, decision of the arbitrator will be final. They are all central in appointees. We have already discussed that before 1967, India was having a single party dominant system. Even if it is a good coalition, even then, if the party in majority is strong enough to dictate terms, then these appointees on behalf of the center will take the decision which will suit the interest of the center, ignoring the regional claims. Article 260 tells about the jurisdiction of the Union in relation to territories outside India. Article 261 Public Acts, Records and Judicial Procedure. Articles 262 it tells about interstate disputes relating to waters. We know that we are having lots of rivers, and we know that interstate river dispute is not a very unusual phenomenon. Now, Articles 262 provides for adjudication of disputes relating to waters of interstate rivers or river valleys. When I started my lecture, I told about that there are certain features to create cooperative flavor in Indian federalism. There are avenues for initiating coordination between the states. What are these avenues? Mainly the Interstate Council. Article 263 enumerates the provisions with respect to Interstate Council. Now, Interstate Council, what it does? It inquires into and advises upon disputes between states. It investigates and carries on discussion on the subjects of dispute which are having common interest. It make recommendations for better coordination of policy and action. Now, this lots of things were told about financial relations, but very little time was spent for modifying legislative relation and administrative relation. And in this way, Indian Constitution forever has deviated from the accepted norms of federalism and may be circumscribed, but establishing dominance of the union over the constituting units. There are provisions for creating zonal councils. State Reorganization Act 1956 created zonal councils like Northern Zonal Council, Eastern Zonal Council, Western Zonal Council, Southern Zonal Council, Central Zonal Council, etc. Who are its members? Chief Minister or Administrator in case of Union territories, and two other ministers from each of the states of the zone can be its member. Actually, the entire India is divided into few zones, and in each of these zones, one zonal council was formed to decide on the matters which may lead to interstate disputes, maybe trade and business, maybe distribution of water, maybe sharing of roads, and like that. Now, here are some observations. Actually, whatever the provisions of the Constitution suggest, that there are many of the centralizing forces which indicate towards having a strong center. Executive power is coextensive with legislative power. As it was in case of central state legislative relation, in case of center state administrative relation also, central dominance has become the prevailing norm. Secondly, as we have already understood that union executive or the state executive can deal with all the matters on which parliament or state legislature, respectively the parliament or the state legislature, can legislate. Up to this extent, it was bit okay. Though there was uneven distribution of power, on allocation of power, there were high imbalances. Still, it was quite okay. But there has been an attempt, extensive attempt for misuse of power on part of the center. Executive power of over the subjects of the concurrent list is also exercised by the states unless the union government decides to do so. That is same as in the case of legislation. Center issues its directives to create a superior subordinate relationship, to ensure compliance with the laws made by the parliament, and not to impede or prejudice the executive power of the union. Further, it issues directive to ensure compliance with the laws made by the parliament for construction and maintenance of means of communications declared to be of national or military importance, on the measures to be adopted for protection of the railways, for the welfare of the scheduled tribes, and for providing facilities for instruction in mother tongue at primary stage to linguistic minorities. Expenses are carried on by the center, and central decision in this regard is almost final. So we have a dominant center. There are certain other points to be noted. All India services. We have IAS, IPS officers. They are all appointed by Union Public Service Commission. The members of Union Public Service Commission are appointed by the President. Center gives the states grants in aid. Who gives grants to whom? Obviously, who is the donor? Donor is in the dominant position, and center decides on these grants considering many facts, not only the real socio-economic situation, but also there are lots of political equations which overshadows its decision. So far as adjudication in interstate river disputes are concerned, or assumption of all the executive powers of the state during national emergency and emergency due to failure of constitutional machinery of in a state is concerned, central dominance is inherent. Article 356, what it suggests, if the president is satisfied on the basis of the report of the governor that the governance in a state cannot be carried out according to the provisions in the constitution, he can declare emergency in the state. Such an emergency must be approved by the parliament within a period of 2 months. And whenever such an emergency is in operation, state government actually ceases to exist. There are certain other centralizing force. Audit of the accounts of both the center and the states are carried on by Comptroller and Auditor General. So, center is having its dominance over the state financial transactions. A governor is appointed in a state by the president. Again, so-called non-political president. Governor acts as the agent. In Article 200 and 201, we have found that governor reserves a bill for the consideration of president, and president enjoys discretionary power in this respect. Appointment of military or paramilitary forces, Central Reserve Police Force, elections to state legislative assemblies, planning commission. These are some other constitutional and extra constitutional arrangements through which center extends its control. However, the situation is fast changing due to the emergence of a history of coalition governments in India, because coalition governments are committed to grant more autonomy to states and to transfer vast majority of centrally sponsored programs to state governments. And we have already seen that both NDA and UPA governments, they had to surrender a number of times to the demands of the regional parties, especially when these regional parties are part of the central government, or at least they are extending their support to the government. Now, state governments, due to globalization, state governments are major stakeholders in terms of both political and economic interest, and these are nurtured by logic of geography and emotional bonding. So, regional diplomacy does play a crucial role in dictating terms of administrative relations. But still, despite these globalized market issues, rise of regional parties, and changing development compulsions, there are many factors which are still not conducive for the proper growth of a federal India. And we hope that our statesmen will come out with the solutions for these problems for which the states Indian integrity of India is now at stake.